Hello everybody and welcome to the Legion Alpha Dungeon Race. This is a pretty awesome event that we've got lined up here for today. We're going to be taking a look at a couple of the brand new dungeons coming in World of Warcraft Legion.
That's right. So we've got two dungeons lined up for you today. First off is going to be the Heroic Halls of Valor. It's a dungeon in the Stormheim zone, very heavily inspired by the Viking mythology of Valhalla. Players are going to be going up in there, golden halls amidst the clouds. And while the normal mode of this dungeon has been accessible on our alpha for some time, it was actually the first dungeon we opened up on alpha. Right. This is the first time anyone's ever doing heroic mode.
Yeah, so it's going to be really interesting actually to see how the teams, which we'll explain who our teams are in just a second, but it's going to be really interesting to see how our two teams approach a dungeon that they've had some chance to practice with a little bit, but it's now everything's just gotten a little bit harder for them.
Exactly that. So then from Heroic Halls of Valor, we're moving on after that to normal mode Maw of Souls, which is a dungeon set in Helheim, basically the polar opposite of the Halls of Valor. Instead of the golden heavens, you're actually in the murky, watery pits of hell. And this is a dungeon that has never before been seen. It's one of, if not the coolest looking dungeon World of Warcraft has ever had, that our artists have ever made, and I can't wait to let people get a look at it.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of brief glimpses of it here and there so far, and what I have seen looks absolutely amazing, so I can't wait to not only show everybody else, but also get a better look at it myself. It's actually looking like it's going to be really, really awesome.
That's the plan.
So like I said, we should actually take a look at the teams that we do have lined up here today. We've composed a couple of teams of some of the top YouTubers and streamers from both North America and Europe. On the left on the screen right now, you can see our European team. We've got Trekkie, he'll be playing Protection Warrior. We've got Laws and Alex. Those guys are from Fat Boss TV. I'm sure everybody's heard of Fat Boss at this point. They'll be playing Mistweaver Monk and Enhancement Shaman. And then we have Bellular, who has an excellent YouTube channel, playing a Marksmanship Hunter. And then Kelric, who's also both a streamer and a YouTuber, playing a Frost Death Knight. And then on the North American team, we have Towley. He's actually playing a Vengeance Demon Hunter. So not only are we seeing new dungeons today, we're also seeing a new class as well. So that'll be really exciting. We have Monkey-O, who rather predictably is also playing a Mistweaver Monk. We have Killers on an Outlaw Rogue. And then we have Tatva and Tovo, who you may know from Line of Sight Gaming, playing the Fire Mage and the Marksmanship Hunter. So a couple teams. I want to be clear that this is a kind of a fun exhibition event. Obviously, we didn't specifically go out looking for just World First Raiders or anything like that.
Right.
We wanted to grab some people that we knew would come in here. Not that World First Raiders wouldn't have fun, but it's a fun event and a way to show off some of these guys' talents.
But let's be clear, exhibition or not, this is going to definitively settle which continent is superior.
Yes, 100%. We'll go with that. So I guess just to give a little bit more information on the event, if you've been on the alpha today, you may have noticed it's a little bit shaky. I know our server teams are working very hard, and our development teams as well are working very hard to get everything there sorted out. But not to worry for this particular event, because these runs actually did take place. We sort of expected that something like this might happen. So these runs actually did take place a couple of days ago. We recorded those runs ahead of time just to make sure that, knowing that alpha is alpha, make sure that we were able to set it up in a way that nothing could possibly go wrong. Well, as little as possible could possibly go wrong. So that way we can have a great broadcast for you guys here
But
today.
neither Josh nor I have actually seen the runs. We've actually completely shielded ourselves from spoilers. So I genuinely have no idea who's going to win. I'm experiencing it right along with the rest of you guys.
Yeah, it should be pretty cool.
A couple of more just technical notes. So the participants are using their characters from our alpha with whatever artifacts, whatever they have on them in our alpha. As part of our testing protocol in general, when you zone into a max level dungeon or a heroic dungeon, we scale you up to level 110. So that's basically the rule set here. It's more or less anything goes. You'll see them using their artifacts. You'll see some of those artifact abilities, and it's what a player on our alpha would experience if they went into one of these dungeons.
And just to sort of drive the point of a little bit harder in terms of it being an alpha, just be aware there are very likely to be some little visual or audio glitches as they're going through the runs. Nothing that's going to harm the run itself in any way. We made sure that didn't happen, but there could be a little weird things here and there. It's alpha, it's testing. That's just what we've got to deal with. So I guess without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Heroic Halls of Valor is our first dungeon that we'll be jumping into. And here we go. You will see initially in the large section of your screen here, I believe that is
the European team.
There it is. The European team. And of course, we will be swapping back and forth between these two views as time progresses. You can also see in the upper right a counter that shows the current time. and in the bottom right is a counter that will increment as they kill individual bosses in this dungeon.
Even from the outset, there's a very immediate difference in approach. The North American team is taking advantage of killers playing rogue to actually sap a lot of the sentry mobs here and sneak past them, while the European team is jumping right in and taking them on head on. That's certainly going to give the NA team a bit of an immediate advantage, but there's also some risk there because down the line, if they wipe, if their healer dies, someone has to release, well, now you have a bunch of mobs separating you from your group, or that you're going to have to go through again. And so it's upfront time savings, but it's pretty risky play.
Yeah, so we can see that the North American team is actually already on the first boss, Heimdall. They're going to start being able to put some damage into him right away. Meanwhile, the European team still having to actually clear some trash and get through there to be able to catch up to them. So this could, again, it is very, very risky. Like we said before, this is heroic Halls of Valor. There's going to be a lot more damage going on. So as long as the North American team can actually kill the boss here, they'll be in a really, really good state.
Yes,
but if they die at all, they're going to be in trouble.
Exactly. So Heimdall is, based on the mythological guardian of Valhalla, the Halls of Valor, and that's basically the function that he serves here. He has a signature horn that he blows to call down storm drakes. This is a very claustrophobic fight. You're basically trapped in a rectangular area. He calls down drakes that do strafe runs across the platform. If you get hit by one of those, you're going to have a really bad time. He throws out his weapon that also adds further area denial. The single major change on heroic difficulty as compared to normal, which the players have never seen before, is if you see those lightning vortexes that are moving back and forth across the play space after the strafe run happens from the Drake, those are not present on normal mode. That is a unique heroic mechanic. Basically, every boss we're going to see has some unique additional mechanic added on heroic compared to normal.
Yep, and it looks like North America is actually doing excellent at the moment. They've got Heimdall down to 6%. They've been able to deal with that surprise extra mechanic very well. Now 3%, 2%. Towley, who's going by Albert, actually dies right here. He's actually fallen right at the end, but they should be... Oh, he released!
Yep.
Oh, that's bad news.
Yep, they could have just rezzed him, but now he's stuck at the entrance. Now how is he going to get back to his group? So meanwhile, obviously the European team, they're still fighting the boss, but all that time advantage that NA otherwise had, looks like they've got to go back, actually, and re-clear a path for their fallen comrade.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they actually try to stealth their way back and sap their way back over, or if they just kill the trash. It looks like they are going to go with the sap maneuver. It makes a whole lot more sense. Without a tank, that trash would just murder you in a hurry.
But every time this happens, every time someone releases or they wipe, though, they're going to pay that cost of having to skip past that trash, and that will very quickly add up to more time than it would have taken to just kill it.
Yep. Meanwhile, our European team also dealing with Heimdall very well. He is the first boss in the dungeon, so I wouldn't expect too much drama on him. There is actually quite a bit of area denial going on there, but they were able to take him down, no problem. And now our European team, despite taking the more stable play earlier on, but they've just aggroed a lot of trash.
A whole lot of trash, yeah. That's normally, you pick left or right, they just decided, why not both?
Exactly, so we'll have to see if they're able to deal with this here. Just checking in with the North American team very briefly, it looks like they have reunited with Towley. By the way, I should just point out real quick, obviously Towley is the demon hunter for the North American team. He's going by the name Albert. And for Europe, I'm a shaman OP, which I guess thanks for that. I believe that's actually Alex from Fat Boss. So,
but he is a shaman. So
he is a shaman.
Accurate.
Yeah.
So interesting. So you see on the European team, they actually they were still recovering from Sated. Kelrick went down there. Looks like she released immediately, but she can just run back unhindered and rejoin the rest of the group as they finish off those mobs.
Yeah, and the European team is actually dealing with this extra pull very, very well. They could still be in some trouble here. Law's actually taking a lot of damage there for just a second. He's just going to go ahead and roll out of there and start to get some extra healing going off, and they have managed to clear it. It was very scary there for just a moment, but Kelrick should be able to group back up with them shortly. And the NA team, despite already having issues with it, is just continuing to sap and paralyze as much trash as possible and just trying to avoid actually pulling all these extra packs. So I actually kind of like that. They've gone with the risky play already. They may as well, it's going to be a pain for them to get anybody back if they wipe. They may as well just keep going with it and hope that by dealing with that and continuing to take that risky play, it will pay off for them.
Yeah, both groups are right around about the same place at this point. They've passed through the gates at the entrance to the Halls of Valor. And really, so this is the place where the greatest Vrykul warriors ascend to spend the rest of their days brawling and feasting and doing other things that great Vrykul warriors do. So they're actually entering into what's basically this giant banquet hall, this feasting hall, and it's much more densely packed. I think they're going to find they're not really able to stealth past much of this anymore.
Right.
And so you see them actually having to take these mobs on and clear them out.
Yeah, they did end up actually pulling those extra trash mobs in the back. They may have actually even been part of the same group. I'm not actually sure how exactly those packs leashed together. But yeah, now we are moving on into this big banquet hall. You can see this is actually a great view. This is a gorgeous dungeon, I just have to say. It looks absolutely amazing. Now the European team is going to be moving in here and actually grabbing quite a large pull here.
Wow, that is...
Trekkie is feeling confident in his abilities. Of course, it's probably worth mentioning as well, like, since this did happen prior to the current alpha build, neither Trekkie nor Towley had access to the protection paladins, which they're known very well for. So Trekkie playing the warrior and Towley actually going with the demon hunter it's very, very interesting that they chose to use those instead of their sort of main class of protection paladin.
Right.
And Trekkie actually doing an amazing job right now dealing with all this, but there's so much stuff on the ground. Laws is taking a ton of damage, down to 5% health there for just a second. Could be in some trouble, somehow keeping his team alive. As I say that, though, Bellular has fallen, and this could spell trouble. Trekkie's going to go down as well, and that's trouble for the European team.
Exactly. I mean, if you're going to pull that many mobs, I mean, I know it's a standard kind of challenge mode technique from what people do on live, round up a ton of mobs, you really need a very coordinated AoE stun rotation, and yeah, I mean, if you're keeping those mobs alive long enough, they're just going to start getting casts off, and you can't keep up with that much trash at once.
Yep. Unfortunately, it looks like there's some trouble for the North American team as well, as they are once again having to stealth past these packs. I actually missed who all was sent back here. It looks like actually the whole team has gone back to the start once again. Yeah, in fact it is. So they must have had some trouble themselves. Sorry, I kind of got fixated on what the European team was doing for a second and missed whatever happened for the North American team. But yeah, again, having to stealth past all this. So there's at this point, they've kind of got it down to a science. It looks like they're actually moving through this very, very quickly and able to get back to where they were just a moment ago without too much trouble.
True, though still better than that would be not dying.
Yeah, I mean, yes. This is a fair point.
Yep. European team definitely, back where they were before, still a little bit ahead. It looks like they're taking it a bit more conservatively this time, maybe not pulling the entire side of the room at once, just getting a couple of packs.
Yeah, and it looks like maybe a few of they did manage to actually kill a few of them so that they have a little bit less to deal with. But yeah, they're leaving those two guys.
Exactly. You can see they're consciously avoiding getting even those two extra mobs. Because I think they're realizing that, being aggressive is one thing, but if you're having to wipe the trash and run back, you should rethink your strategy.
Yeah, definitely. So it's probably worth mentioning that there are 5 bosses in this dungeon, and at this point in the dungeon, you can actually go 2 different directions, if I remember correctly. Looks like both teams are kind of, we might see North America actually switch a different direction here, I'm not sure, but it kind of seems like both teams are going in the same direction and going after this boss on the left.
Yes, her name is Herja, so basically you have 2 options. After defeating Himdall at the gates, you can go left towards Herja, which is basically she is one of the Valkyr, and that's kind of the Shield Maiden Valkyrie side of the Halls of Valor and that part of the Vrykul culture. Then if you go to the right instead, you actually come out into this open, sprawling hunting grounds where the greatest Vrykul warriors hunt prey to pass their time. So we will see if the North American team retraces their footsteps or if they decide to go in a different direction this time.
Looks like they're actually trying to go straight up the middle. That's okay. They're just going to go ahead and pull these couple of trash packs here and go back. Probably just don't want to have to deal with them. They will have to clear those later to get to the final boss. So killing them now kind of makes some sense. It also reduces the risk of accidentally aggroing them as they continue through.
Exactly. You can go left or right, but you have to clear both paths. Once you've done both, when you come back, that central gate opens, letting you access the final bosses.
Yep. So at the European side of things, as the North American team finishes up that trash pack, the European team, they've actually cleared most of the way through this side. They will be getting over to Herja's area here very, very shortly. Alex actually getting kind of low on health there. Looks like he got hit by a cleave or something. I have to say, I'm really, really happy with the Enhancement Shaman changes in Legion. I've been playing an Enhancement Shaman a lot lately, but the changes in Legion, ooh, he took a big hit there, down to 8% health. They're really, really fun. So I just wanted to insert that in there. If you do have Legion Alpha access and you haven't tried Enhancement Shaman yet, you should definitely try it out. It's really, really fun. but the European team doing a great job clearing through this trash here. They are taking it much, much more carefully. Like, they could theoretically have gone up and aggroed that extra pack in the back there.
Exactly.
But they don't want to risk that again.
Yeah, 'cause I think my guess would be that they probably did a lot of practice runs on this dungeon on normal to kind of figure out their strat, and they're quickly finding that a lot of the more aggressive pulling tactics I bet that worked for them on normal are just getting them into too much trouble on heroic to really be reliable. So
yeah, it's really interesting actually how even on trash packs where there really isn't much in the way of mechanics changes, just the fact that now this ability does so much more damage really changes the way that you have to actually approach the dungeon. You can't just say, we'll just group them up and do whatever and we'll live through it and it'll be fine anymore. You have to say, all right, we need to not stand in these things. We need to avoid, like that blast of light there actually took a big chunk out of Trekkie for a second, but it looks like Laws is going to heal him up just fine. But yeah, it's really interesting to see just how much they're almost, I don't want to say struggling, but just having some issues with different mechanics that they may have possibly not even realized were that big of an issue before because they'd only done the dungeon on normal.
Yep, exactly. And it's both, also just even the health pool of those mobs makes the difference between you can burn them down while they're stunned, while they're interrupted, versus, oh, hey, they still have 30% health left, now they're getting their abilities off, and where do you go from here? Yep,
it actually looks like the North American team, they're actually starting to catch back up. They've got like 2 or 3 more trash packs ahead of them still to catch up to where the European team is, but yeah.
So coming back over to the European team, actually, the trash that they're fighting right now is actually really almost a precursor to the boss and a prelude to what the boss mechanics are going to be. So there are these 2 powerful mystics. One of them is a Stormcaller who uses nature power. The other one uses holy energy. The Stormcaller has this ability that does basically zone-wide massive nature damage unless you huddle under the bubble to protect yourself from it. So it's very much a clump-up mechanic. The other mystic that they're about to go fight now, you'll see he uses holy power and has much more of a spread out and dodge these waves of missiles sort of ability. And you're going to see that coming up pretty soon. And you'll notice after the first one was defeated, the Valkyr actually came by and resurrected its spirit to continue to fight on. And we're going to see the importance of that in just a second. So yeah, there's that Sanctify ability, sending out waves of holy missiles that everyone's going to want to dodge and weave in and out of.
Yeah, this is giving me some Heart of Fear flashbacks.
A little bit of attenuation.
Yeah, man, I died to that so many times. It's embarrassing. One other thing I wanted to point out about what the European team has been doing is actually they have been. You can kind of see it on your screen right now. They've been putting down these markers as well, and I'm very curious what their plans are for those markers. We just saw the resurrection ability as well. And wow, actually the North American team has caught up fairly substantially. They're now working on one of the 2 spirits. They've decided, or one of the 2
mystics.
Mystics, yeah, sorry. They haven't started on the other one yet. They're doing them in the opposite order. But now the European team has aggroed the boss, and we're going to start seeing them take on Herja.
Okay, so the boss Herja here, the core mechanic on this fight is that when she is within 40 yards or so of one of the mystics, that mystic will empower her, giving her a stacking buff and also giving her the ability to cast that mystic's respective ability. So here you see Herja using that zone-wide nature damage. But the longer the mystic channels on her, the more and more she's buffed. And the more and more that ability is going to be lethal. So you want to move her over to the other side, at which point those stacks will begin to fade. And on the flip side, the other mystic is now empowering her holy aspect. On normal mode, as soon as the boss leaves proximity of one of the mystics, they immediately lose that empowerment. On heroic, however, it ticks down much more gradually. So you're going to have to deal with the boss having both empowered abilities for periods of time as you move Herja back and forth. Like, the tank's actions on this fight are really essential.
Yeah, and we can also see this is probably what they were setting up those markers for before as well. To be able to set a point to just go and stand for things, and there's that bubble as well that they're going to need to stand in. And Bellular actually getting caught out as well as, I believe that was Laws there for just a second.
Yep.
They're actually getting really low. Bellular has fallen, Kelric at 10%, Laws at 13%.
And we see Kelric with the battle res out
Yep.
onto Bellular, getting him back up, back into the fight.
Yep, so it looks like the European team has stabilized. The North American team is now about to kill that second Mystic, so they will be able to begin fighting Herja themselves here in just a second. But the European team does actually have a pretty substantial lead in the fight because Herja is already down to 13% and falling very, very rapidly, now down to 12, 10, 11%. Hopefully for them, a Trekkie getting kind of low there, but does catch a big bubble there from Laws. But this should be over for them here in just a couple of seconds. They're actually holding her right in the middle, so she's continuing to get the channel from both sides, but doesn't look like it's going to end up being a problem for them. They will take her down.
It looked like they were trying to move close to the exit from the room so that they could run out as quickly as possible once the boss fell, but obviously that means that she's getting empowered by both at once.
Yeah, and they may not have actually known that because they had not been able to do this on heroic mode before.
Yep.
So the North American team has now pulled Herja. They've already got her down to 73% health. They've actually managed to put quite a bit of damage in right from the start, which is impressive. I believe they're actually killing her a little bit faster overall. Obviously, they started later, but they're killing her a little bit faster overall than the European team did, down to 60% already. So very good damage coming out from these guys. But we'll have to see if they're going to be able to catch back up. There is, this is actually really dangerous. She's actually channeling right in the middle and getting the benefits of both at this particular moment in time. So this could spell a lot of trouble for the North American team. They're going to have to pull her away. I believe they were just on the blue side, so they need to get her over to the yellow side there, the holy side.
Yeah, exactly. I think normally you'd want to try to wait until one of those major abilities had been used so that you could move the boss freely without worrying about them stopping to cast at that really dangerous midway point.
Yeah, and this does also mean that the holy side is going to get a lot more of those stacks because they need to wait for the stacks to fall off from the lightning side. But she's already down to 19% health. Killers takes a big chunk of damage there, dropped down to 7%. Actually, now he's just up and dead. They may be able to... No, actually, they do not have a battle res on their team. So it's going to be trouble for them. They're going to have to be able to keep that damage going, be able to finish Herja off here. I feel like they should be able to get the kill here, even with Killers dead, but that is going to be a blow to their total speed on this boss.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually a challenging comp choice as well, since really any small mistake is going to be a much bigger potential setback.
Tovo down, Monkio getting pretty low. Monkio's now down. This could be trouble. Taffa down. It's only Towley alive with 2%. Can he actually make it? He's going to just duck out of there really quick. He needs to be able to finish her off right here, popping every cooldown he has available, and he will actually be able to score the kill. So very well done there by Towley, being able to get that kill.
Snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. But the entire group is dead and had to release. And guess what is waiting for them between where they are right now and the entrance to the zone.
So this is actually smart from Tally. He actually jumped into one of the trash packs that they had not killed already so that he could reconnect with his team and start to move up with them.
Since they don't need to kill those mobs anyway, since they're going to go right this time when they get back to the intersection, but they still have a bunch of clearing ahead of them. Now, back on the European team side, we see that they have crossed over to the other end of that banquet hall, and they've come out into the fields of the Eternal Hunt, where wildlife, both peaceful and predatory wildlife roams. These are the hunting grounds of the Vrykul, and they're going to be making their way through these fields. Now, lurking in these fields is a very powerful wolf called Fenrir, and this is an interesting sort of approach to the boss because the boss will actually ambush you initially, and that's what you're going to see happening in a short while, since he is, of course, a predator. Once you've done a bit of damage to him, he will actually retreat to his den to lick his wounds, and the fight will continue there.
Yep, and so we see, it's actually really interesting. They're having to be kind of careful here because, like you said, there are some non-aggressive trash mobs in this area, but they do still have quite a bit of health, and they can do a fair amount of damage. So if you accidentally aggro one of those with an AoE or something, it can be trouble. So Trekkie, actually Trekkie got really low there for just a second. Trekkie might actually just go down, and he does. So can they actually finish off this remaining bear? That is a very angry-looking bear. Looks like he's aggroed onto Alex for the time being, and they're just kiting him as best they can.
Yeah, it looks like that should be doable.
Yeah, it should be doable, but it does have to be in some quick thinking from the European team to be able to finish it off. A nice kiting there with Kelric actually using the chains of ice as well as...
a lot of snares, stuns, and they can now get Trekkie back up.
Yep. So the European team will recover from that. Just checking in with the North American team really quickly, we can see them trying to clear through some of these trash maps here. Are they actually just going to run straight to the portal? It looks like they might just be running directly for the portal, which will allow them to just go ahead and hit that portal and port over into this hunting ground area without having to kill the trash. But no, they've actually stopped and decided to fight it for just a second. That'll be really interesting, but we should check in with the European team because they have engaged this first section of Fenrir here. They've got him down to 80% health. Like you were saying, he will actually retreat at some point here very shortly, but this is sort of just like almost phase one, but not really of the boss fight.
So yes, he has a variety of shredding attacks, bleeds, the sorts of things you'd expect from a wolf. One of his signature abilities is a fixate where he chases after someone, getting a stacking damage buff over time, and they have to run away from him. But at this point, he's been forced to retreat, so he's going to go back to his cave and begin to lick his wounds. He'll actually heal up a bit over time, so you want to make your way to him as quickly as possible. Of course, these groups are rushing as much as they can anyway.
Yeah, but that's still very interesting that even in a regular run, you still kind of want to try and be careful as you move through here and pull as little of the extra stuff as possible, just so that you can get over there and catch back up to him before he can heal himself back up.
Exactly. Now, back on the North American side, we see them still on their mounts for a little bit, looking for Fenrir. It looks like they were just kind of running around, training a couple of mobs around, trying to find the boss as quickly as possible, and then dismounting to deal with the things that they've picked up along the way.
Yep, and they did actually aggro one of these. I saw the name of it there for just a second, but then it's gone away again. One of those extra deer, the non-aggressive deer. They've actually aggroed it on accident, so they will have to kill that. And like I said before, they do actually have quite a bit of health, so that's a little bit of an unfortunate situation for them. But now it looks like they're going back to their trademark trash skipping and just trying to get past as much as possible. They have located Fenrir actually in the same position as it was for the European team, so they will be able to get up over here and start aggroing or start attacking him as well, and doing their best. They've actually started to close that gap between them and the European team, but as I say that, the European team has just reconnected with Fenrir. They got back to him at about 60% health, and they're going to be able to start the final phase of the fight.
So now you see Fenrir using his Scent of Blood ability, where he is chasing after his hapless prey, getting increasingly dangerous as he goes. And then once that fixate ends, he goes back to being tanked normally.
Yeah.
Now, on Heroic, whenever Fenrir lets out his howl, he's actually going to call 3 extra wolves to join the fight. That's something that does not happen on normal mode, and which we're about to see.
Yep, there he's actually using his Ravenous Leap. We will see that howl in a second, but the Ravenous Leap, just to call that out, he just sort of jumps around and attacks some different members of the team. Here he's going to do his fixate again, and this fixate could actually be really, really dangerous for North America once they get here, because while the European team has cleared all the trash in the area, if the North American team decides that they're going to continue with the trash skipping, they're going to have very little area to actually kite him around.
Exactly, and we also just saw Karik use her artifact-activated ability there to call down Syndragosa to do a strafe run on the boss. It is very temporary, very placeholder visuals, but the gist of the ability is there.
Yeah, and now we're seeing those extra ads that you were mentioning earlier coming out. It looks like the European team has dealt with them very, very quickly. There's just one remaining, and they should be able to finish Fenrir off after that, down to 14% health. He's going to go ahead and chase after. I missed who he's actually chasing after at the moment, but that'll only last a couple of seconds, and then they will be able to reconnect onto him, and they should be able to finish him here very, very shortly. And now what we're seeing from the North American team as this Fenrir fight finishes for Europe, kind of see it down in the corner, they have actually chosen to, actually it's flipped around now, they actually have chosen to kill all the trash in this area, which is a very, very smart decision, because like I said earlier, they will have to kite the boss around, so having that extra space to do that in will be very, very helpful.
All right, so that is Fenrir down for Europe. So
Trekkie just running along at 9% health.
Yep.
No problem, it's whatever. That's funny. So it does mean that our European team is now up by a boss kill yet again. Not by a ton, as the North American team will be on that boss here in just a second, but if the European team can sort of use this momentum to swing forward and move on to the next couple of encounters, they are now going to have to go through that central bridge area. Looks like they've already cleared that trash pack.
Exactly. So once you've defeated both bosses, you actually get a huge speed boost from Odin. He has found you worthy of being his potential champions and worthy of appearing before him, so that gate opens, and players run up and cross the Great Bifrost Bridge leading to Odin's throne, as you see, framed on both sides, and they're going right to his throne room.
Yeah, it's a very, very pretty section of the dungeon as well. When I ran this on Alpha myself, I actually managed to get myself killed on that bridge. I'm not entirely sure how I did that.
You probably didn't go straight down the bridge, and you fell off the left
Is that
or right
right?
side.
So you actually have to run straight into the bridge.
You have to walk in a straight line. It's a very challenging mechanic.
Well, all right, fine. But checking in with North America, they are now engaged onto Fenrir. They've got him down to 25% health. He's jumping around, doing some damage to him. They have the ads up as well. Monkey-O actually is going to fall, so they could be in a lot of trouble here. Towley down to 9% health. Fenrir is still at 20% health. Towley's going to go down. Can they just manage to somehow kite through the rest of this? Tatva's dead as well.
No healer, no tank, and 4 mobs running around.
Yeah,
not likely.
This sounds like bad news. Killers is going to fall here in just a second.
Well,
and
fortunately, they're
Tobo,
very good at that sap routine.
yeah, at this point, they've got that down to a science, like I was saying earlier. It should be no problem for them whatsoever to get through this, but they are going to have to sap their way back.
All right, so cutting back
now,
over to the European team that is in Odin's throne room. So what you're actually seeing here is a pre-boss event that's kind of reminiscent of the Dwarven Council that some players may remember from Blackwing Descent before the boss Atramedes. There are 4 great champions, and you can choose what order you want to challenge them in. But once you defeat one champion, the other 3 remaining ones get that champion's ability. So over time, they're going to get successively more powerful, each with its own signature ability.
it does look like they're polite enough to wait until you're finished with one before you attack the next one.
Of course, they'll be kind of dishonorable, right? Each one of them, these are great, very cool champions. They don't need help to take you on. They're going to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And they'll totally win. I promise.
Absolutely, 100%. No possible way that they could ever fall to just some group of 5 YouTube. Oh, never mind.
So yeah, you see the other 2 get empowered. Each one has their own ability. One of them that you saw there briefly was summoning the spirit of an ancestor that creates an ab that will walk slowly towards that Vrykul and provide a massive heal if you allow that to reach him.
They're actually fighting 2 of them at once
Yes.
now. They've actually chosen to that is, I'm not misunderstanding the mechanic, right? They've actually aggroed them.
I think the last 2 joined the fight at once.
Oh, okay,
Since
cool.
they kind of realized maybe after seeing their 2 brothers fall, maybe this would still be a fair fight.
Yeah. Even then, I think that these 2 Vrykul are probably not long for the world, as it looks like the European team is having no issues whatsoever, even with the extra bit of power that these 2 Vrykul now have. Looks like they should be fine.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, the North American team is working their way back to Fenrir, trying to get over there as quickly as possible. And there's now a dragon there. That's interesting. I didn't actually know that dragons appeared in that section.
Yeah. Dragons, deer, just the standard wildlife that you would hunt. I mean, it's kind of normal.
Excellent.
So yeah, I mean, the North American team has largely cleared away. They have 1 or 2 mobs to CC as they get back to Fenrir, but they'll be able to go back in and be ready for it this time. I think what happened last time there was that Monkey got targeted with Taste for Blood and was just blown up because he was too close to the boss before he could move far enough away. And then once you lose your healer early on in a dungeon fight like that,
Well, they've actually aggroed
an
extra deer, which is not ideal because they're trying to get back to Fenrir as soon as possible. And is Fenrir actually still healing? It looks like he may have stopped at a certain point.
Yeah, he heals up to a certain point,
Okay.
and then no further, because, I mean, having the boss heal all the way back to 100 would be kind of mean.
It's heroic mode. You're supposed to be mean. But yeah, no, it's completely understandable as a mechanic. Maybe on Mythic.
Yeah. All right, so back over on the EU side, we see boss 4, God King Skovald, coming in. So this dungeon and this scene are actually very closely tied in with the lore of the Zone of Stormheim. You are actually seeking to get a Pillar of Creation. That's one of the things that you need to banish the Legion from our world. And the Pillar of Creation found in Stormheim is called the Aegis of Agrimar, and it's kept by Odin. You've been contending against this powerful Vrykul king who is an agent of the Legion throughout the zone, and your paths finally collide in Odin's throne room, and you fight him as you each try to prove yourselves worthy to wield and to claim the Aegis. So the core mechanic here, as we see Kelric go down right away, the core mechanic here is involving the Aegis, which is that barrier that you see. There's an actual shield. When the God King holds it, he is nearly invulnerable. But when you damage him and when you chip away at that shield, eventually it will overload and he will fling it to the ground. At that point, you can pick it up and you have to use it to defend yourself against his fell onslaught. Yeah. And then the process repeats itself because his attacks overload your ability to hold the shield, and it basically bounces back and forth between the 2 of you.
Yeah, and we're obviously seeing a lot of that Burning Legion. I don't remember fell elementals in Vrykul lore, so we're obviously seeing a lot of that Burning Legion influence right now.
And in fact, those elementals are the heroic specific mechanic for this boss. Those elementals will fixate on random players and leave persistent trails of fell fire in their path, in their wake rather, until you defeat them.
So you do actually have to kill those those elementals that come out, or else the entire room will be fire, which makes it very difficult to not stand in. And there we're once again seeing, just checking in with North America, wow, they've actually wiped again on Fenrir. That is very, very bad news for North America, as that's going to put them very, 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 they were already behind, but now they are in serious trouble in this first run here on Heroic Halls of Valor. But checking back in with the European team, Kelric is still dead, obviously the only one with a battle res on the team, unable to resurrect herself, unfortunately.
And actually, with one person dead, those elementals become increasingly troublesome because, I mean, there's multiple elementals up. There's almost everybody has to kite one now. And so it really takes people out of their DPS, out of their overall throughput, and is going to prolong this fight even further.
Yeah, and of course, Bellular is the only one on the team with really much in the way of ranged abilities. So it's going to largely be up to him to kill it, which means there is that extra DPS on God King Skovald. They do have him down to 11% health now, but that's a lot of damage that maybe a little bit of the ranged diseases or something could have been coming from Kelric to help them out. But it looks like Europe is not having any issues whatsoever, regardless of that death, as they should be able to finish him here, and then there he goes. All of his plans have been brought to ruin, and that will be the end of God King Skovald, and very shortly they will be moving on to the final encounter of the dungeon.
Yes, and the final encounter of the dungeon is, of course, Odin himself. And Odin, really, he is ultimately testing you. He seeks battle, but he also seeks champions who can prove themselves worthy, and that is the right that you have earned. But the fight against him, he's basically a raid boss. You know, you'll see he's a skull mob. He has millions and millions of health. He's kind of holding back quite a bit here. But your goal is actually to get him down to 80% health. At which point he's like, okay, you guys aren't completely terrible. You're worthy. So Odin begins by having signature spears that come up from the ground. Those need to be avoided, and then you're actually using them to hide from some of his other abilities. On Heroic, you'll see that Storm-Forged construct that he just summoned. That needs to be interrupted. It casts a spell, and it will cast faster and faster and faster the longer it's alive. That is a unique addition to the fight on Heroic mode only. So that's going to be a really high priority every time you see it pop up.
Yep, so the European team doing their best to sort of deal with these mechanics. Those have now exploded, and they're going to be putting all sorts of stuff to not stand in all the way around the room. You can see there's lots of regular damage coming out as well. However, there are also these runes that each individual member is able to activate. Gives themselves a very, very strong buff that's going to increase, I believe it's your damage and your haste. I don't remember exactly.
It's your overall throughput. It's basically, the core mechanic there is each player gets branded with a different sigil that matches the color and the shape of one of the runes on the ground, the 5 runes that you see on the floor circling the room. You have a few seconds while you take damage over time to run to the appropriate marking on the ground. And if you do that, it both clears your damage over time effect and gives you a really powerful transformation that increases your damage done. And that buff is going to be really essential if you want to power your way through Odin's massive health pool.
Yep. There are a lot of those spears now active as well. So if they don't, they do only have to get him to 80% health, and he's getting very, very close. But that explosion does a lot of damage. Laws could be in some trouble. Gets a big heal on himself to top himself back off. But now you can see that construct is just spamming that surge ability. Trekkie could go down here. Another big heal is going to top Trekkie back off. Odin's still at 82% health. I'm entirely unsure of what's just happened here.
No, you don't actually. So again, Odin's holding back a little bit. He doesn't really want to kill you. So when you would have died, one of his Valkyr actually swoops down, picks you up, and carries you off.
I see.
Because you've lost. But he doesn't really want to kill you. That would just be mean.
Yeah. So was that actually a...
That was a wipe.
That was a wipe. Okay. So they will have to go ahead and re-engage here very, very shortly. And the fact there he has now activated again. Meanwhile, checking in over with North America, they have managed to down Fenrir. They are going to be working their way back out through this dungeon. You can see them in the lower right of your screen there. They will be moving back out through the dungeon and getting back over. They do still have God King Skovald to go through before they can get back to Odin. So aggroing this bear is probably not something that was in their plans at this moment in time, but good for them for continuing on at this point and just doing their best to complete the dungeon.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, all it takes is a couple of wipes. Clearly the European team is very close to victory. They are very far ahead, but 1 or 2 more wipes, and that could all change.
Yep. They have once again re-engaged Odin, and maybe now with a little bit more understanding of these mechanics could have a little bit a better time going through this and controlling all those mechanics. We see them now activating those runes, getting that throughput buff, and they'll be able to start sinking a whole bunch of damage into Odin here very, very shortly, as well as obviously the extra healing from Laws on that Mistweaver Monk as well. So I imagine they've already got basically halfway through the fight at this point.
Exactly. I think it's just a matter of avoiding the abilities. I think I misspoke earlier. The spears aren't actually for hiding behind. I think it's more about getting away from them so that when they explode, you actually have time and space to dodge the volleys of missiles that come out. And it feels like I think between that and really giving that heroic ad due respect, because once you let it get a few casts off, you saw what happened there. It just chain casts over and over again.
Yep, so they are controlling this fairly well for the time being. We can see the North American team is now engaged those elders from earlier, and they will be working their way through those so that they can get up to God King Skovald and start working on him as well. I feel like the European team should be feeling fairly confident at this point. They're down to only 6% more health that they need to get through Odin, 5% more health that they need to get before they complete the dungeon here. But very, very good showing from them overall.
Exactly, and I think, I mean, they may not even have one more spear explosion happen. We'll see, and if they do, I think they're ready for it. You see them getting out of the big AoE here.
Yeah, just going to move off to the side.
Done.
Odin at 82%, now 81%. They may get another explosion here, but if they do, it's going to be right at the end. It looks like he actually summoned some more spears instead. And there we go. That's going to be it. 36 minutes, 7 seconds, and 10 whatever the microsecond. I don't remember the exact term for that. But very, very good run coming out from Europe. Very well done. Congratulations to those guys. They will be our winner. However, we are going to continue watching the North American run. Just let them have the opportunity to sort of redeem themselves in the face of this crushing defeat and work on through the rest of the dungeon. They have they're actually paralyzing the ad in the corner. That's the one that walks over to him, and you said it heals him, correct?
Yes, if it's allowed to reach him.
Yeah, so paralyzing it instead of having to kill it will actually help their time quite a bit, because we are now basically just going for speed at this point. We're going for time to see how quickly they can actually complete this dungeon. And remember, they did have a few wipes, and a couple of times they had to run back through the trash and having to actually sap things all the way through. So this will be impressive regardless, just being able to, considering that none of them have run this dungeon on this difficulty before. It's going to be impressive regardless, but we'll have to see how quickly they can actually finish through the rest of this here.
Yeah, like I really think most of their downfall came from probably underestimating specific mechanics that you could largely power through on normal, but which rapidly become lethal on heroic difficulty. And at the very least, if they can get past Skovald, once they're in Odin, they no longer have to worry about having to run back through any of that trash that they skipped, since they're just essentially saved and they can resume right here.
Yep. So they do have these two guys down at about half health. Looks like they're actually kind of cleaving them quite a bit instead of just focusing specifically on one of them. There's going to be another Ancestor coming out, and I don't know that they have another bit of crowd control for that one, so it looks like they are going to switch over and actually kill that second Ancestor. It falls very, very quickly, but there's a third one now as well. Nice Frost Nova there to actually hold it in place from Tatva. It's going to allow them to finish off maybe allow them to finish off this one of these two elders here. No, they're going to have to go ahead and kill that Ancestor, and now they should be able to finish it off. They still have that one paralyzed in the back, but with those two Ancestors now dead, they've got a little bit less to worry about. Now it's just on to this last Ancestor, and once he's down, they will be on to God King Skovald.
Yep, so just a few moments now, and we will see the God King come back in.
It's also possibly worth calling attention once again to the fact that Towley, as Albert, is playing a class that obviously no one really has a ton of experience with at this point. And he's doing very, very well. A lot of the initial streams that I've seen of people attempting to tank on a Demon Hunter, they just kind of fall over flat in a hurry because it is a fairly technical class in certain ways to actually be able to survive through damage. So I have to give him props for being brave enough to say, yeah, you know what, Dungeon Race, North America pride on the line.
Exactly.
I'm going to go with the brand new class. Why not?
But I mean, that's how the Vengeance Demon Hunter, with their sigils, among other utility, really lets them control the battlefield as a tank. They essentially can, clump mobs together, and they have a number of other tools that are great for trying to do this type of speedrun. They're also, of course, high risk whenever you're doing that sort of thing. So right here we see them jump back in and engage the God King.
Yep, they're doing, again, a pretty good amount of damage right out of the gate. I feel like their initial damage has been very, very strong, and it's probably why, up until they were struggling with Fenrir so much, the race was actually really close up until that point. Just because the amount of damage they've been able to put out, despite some mistakes on the trash packs and such earlier, has been very, very good for them. God King already down to 64% health, despite, like, obviously they have to move every time that he puts up that shield as well. They have to get around behind him, and now they're having to kill these ads as well. Nice, I believe that was the sigil from Albert, from Towley there, actually pulled a lot of those guys together, and now they're going to be stunned as well, which is going to allow them to do some, possibly some AoE onto them. Killers looks like he's over there just going toe-to-toe with them. He's actually going to kill them off very, very easily.
Exactly.
Very well
Since
done.
they're fixated on other players, once you get them clumped and stunned and snared, it's pretty easy for someone to just cleave them down. I think it's actually a really good point that you make about their burst on the pull. I'd be really curious to hear from both of these teams after this is done about what their strategies, about what their philosophies were coming into this and how they formed their teams. Like, looking at the two, it seems like the NA team might really have a mix of heavy burst damage and then also out of combat utility, a lot of that CC that's letting them skip packs. Maybe their strategy was to skip as much of the trash as possible and then burst down the bosses with high single target DPS. Whereas if you look at the EU team, they have a lot more control, they have in-combat utility like a battle res, and things that are going to let them be more resilient as they fight through more enemies.
Yeah, it's also going to be really interesting to see how that, because I believe, I'm not 100% certain on this, but I believe they actually stick with the same team composition when they go into the next dungeon. So it'll be interesting to see, like, I feel like a lot of the issues that the North American team has had in this run has just been sort of like, okay, yeah, this is our plan, we'll go through this because we've had time to practice this dungeon, and they almost got a little bit reckless, a little bit careless sometimes.
And it's the exact sort of thing we've seen in a lot of our live raid races at BlizzCon. There's always, that balance between aggressive strats and playing it somewhat conservative, and the more risks you take, it can succeed wonderfully when it pays off, but a lot of the time, under this type of speedrun pressure, you should just go with something safe. And I always like to bring up Midwinter's Siege of Orgrimmar race, and their gambit in against the Dark Shaman.
The Dark Shaman, yeah.
It's sometimes you just want to play it safe and go with the thing that you know works instead of trying to pull 8 mobs, 10 mobs at once and save time.
Yeah, exactly. And so going into the next dungeon, the Maw of Souls, which none of these teams have run at all before, it'll be interesting to see if the North American team plays it a little bit more safely, because they won't have been able to practice, like, maybe we can skip all these, maybe we can pull
I would be
multiple trash
truly
packs.
shocked if they didn't. I think, not even necessarily knowing what a lot of the trash does, it's going to be very hard to justify just blindly pulling multiple packs. I mean, for the bosses, they can at least study the dungeon journal and have a sense of what those abilities are going to be. But when you're looking at a bunch of, cursed Vrykul Kvaldir in front of you on the ship in the Maw of Souls, you don't know what they do. They could fear, they could stun, they could do all sorts of things that you would not want to deal with at the same time.
Yep. So now the North American team has engaged Odin, and they have gotten him down to 95% so far. We actually saw, I missed exactly who it was. It may have been Killers actually just kind of hanging out for the longest time in that AoE and ducking out at the last possible second, showing maybe some of his world first race experience there and recognizing, okay, it's going to take me about this long to get over there. I'm actually getting a great view of those runes at the moment too, how there's the symbol over their heads and they're able to move over. Ooh, it looks like somebody actually missed theirs for a second. I believe that was Tatva, the mage, actually missed his rune there for a second. So that's going to hurt their damage output a fair amount.
I think it was actually Monkio.
Oh,
so,
maybe Monkio,
so maybe some of their healing, but that shouldn't be as big a deal if
Right.
they play well and avoid the avoidable damage.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Just continuing, they do need to interrupt or kill that ad. There's the interrupt that goes out onto it, and we can see the big bubble coming out onto Towley there as well, because he did get kind of low here for a second, but now they're going to be able to continue here. Now remember, the European team did wipe on this boss at about this percentage. It was a little bit lower, but this is about where this fight seems to start to get really, really hectic if you're not able to keep up with everything. So they're spreading out once again, trying to get to all of those runes and being able to get all of their benefits. Looks like they did get all of them this time, so that will help them a little bit with that damage and that healing as well. Odin now down to 85%, 84%. There's some more of those spears coming out, but I believe that was his first wave of spears. There will be a second wave of spears before they have to worry about the explosion. They do need to not stand in this.
Yep, he just grips everybody in and then starts winding up that big AoE. You just need to run back out. Looks like they did that just fine.
Yep. One of my old guildmates had a great saying that we used to quote all the time, which is how to play WoW. Don't stand in the thing, run away when the boss says stuff, and they did that very, very well. Got a final time of 44 minutes, 42 seconds exactly. So not quite as good as the 36 minutes of the European team, but it was still less than a 10-minute difference.
Yeah, so once they got to those final bosses, I mean, they did one-shot Odin. They didn't have any difficulties there. They had a better time at the end, I think, than the European team, but that time lost in Fenrir's area was really, really brutal. All right, so now here we see a head-to-head comparison of how the teams fared with a boss-by-boss time breakdown.
Yeah, it's actually very interesting to look at. We can see Europe actually was a little bit slower on Heimdall because of that trash skipping we saw earlier, but that was basically where North America's lead ended because Europe was able to get a much faster kill on Herja and much faster on Fenrir. We can see they were at 10 minutes ahead actually at the time when Fenrir fell for Europe versus North America. But then North America actually did a pretty good job of catching back up from there. Exactly. Even though they obviously they were still behind at the end, they shaved that 10-minute difference down to an 8-minute difference.
Exactly, they got those 2 minutes back on Odin. But yeah, really, like you said, it was that middle section where the race was won and lost.
Yep, exactly. So very well played to both of our teams. Obviously, it's really, really cool to see these guys just going head-to-head in something that obviously kind of took them by surprise a little bit,
clearly.
like a little bit of extra damage. We do have one more dungeon, however, that we will be taking a look at here very, very shortly. I'm really, really excited for this one.
Me too. So this next dungeon, this is the Maw of Souls. And the Maw of Souls is this dark, stormy, foggy area in Stormheim. And what players are going to do here, what you're going to see in the dungeon, is players are going up to this rocky outcropping amidst, Vrykul spirits and fog, blowing a horn that will summon the Vrykul ship of the dead that sails out of the mist, and they get aboard that ship where they will traverse their way through the ship and ultimately confront Helya. Now, Helya is the first of the Valkyr. She was once an ally of Odin's, once worked under Odin to create Valkyr in his service, but she rebelled against him, and essentially, there was an act of treachery, staged an uprising, she lost that fight, and she was cast down into the depths of hell, where she now collects the souls of the cursed Vrykul. She is Lady Commander of the Kavaldir, the seafaring Vrykul you may remember from the coast of Borean Tundra back in Northrend, as well as her own Valkyr. And she plots and schemes to get back at Odin to topple him from his throne. We need to go down in here and confront her in her realm.
Yeah, so we're actually really getting a very serious lesson in Vrykul lore here today as well. It's very exciting. I know a lot of people, it's actually something, it's interesting, it's something I see come up from time to time is, we want to know more about the Vrykul, we want to know more about the Vrykul. Well, there you go.
The entire zone of Stormheim, if you want to know more about the Vrykul, Stormheim answers those questions and more. It's one of my favorite zones in the expansion.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing this dungeon as well. So let's just get into it. Let's go ahead.
Without further ado.
Take a look. Very first time that this dungeon has been seen outside of Blizzard Entertainment. Ladies and gentlemen, the Maw of Souls.
Right, so this is a 3-boss dungeon. It's much more linear, a much quicker dungeon overall than the Halls of Valor, which had that sprawling, non-linear structure to it. But as you see, as I mentioned, the initial part is this rocky outcropping. They're working their way up towards the first boss as Kavaldir stand by and bar their path.
Yeah, this is, I think it's very interesting that the North American team still elected to sap some trash and run past it.
They're like, never been here before, no idea what this thing does, let me sap it.
I mean, I gotta admit, I admire their gusto here, their gumption, I guess, to try and go through this. We can still see that trash actually sapped in the background there. Meanwhile, the European team, they're just trying to kill everything. They're actually grouping up quite a bit and may actually be in a little bit of trouble here. Alex taking quite a bit of damage, but looks like it may have just been a frontal cone or something. He's going to be able to get out of that and be just fine. Now, one thing that we do need to make sure is very, very clear is that, again, this is alpha. and there is tuning ongoing for this dungeon.
Yes.
I believe even since this run happened, there have been some additional tuning changes, so I don't know what those are or why they happened, but I just feel it's worth mentioning. If we see anything crazy, it's alpha,
Yes.
it's early.
I think the other thing that's worth noting is that unlike the last dungeon, which was on heroic difficulty, this is actually the normal difficulty of Maw of Souls. So really, the skill level of these players is far above the target audience for, let's say, normal difficulty. But of course, the thing that offsets that is the fact that they've never been here before and they have no idea what these things do, and they're facing them for the first time under time pressure.
Yeah, it's got to be very difficult if you're Fat Boss to be like, hey, let's go ahead and just look up the Fat Boss guy. Oh, we can't. So, and the same obviously for Line of Sight as well on the North American team. So this is some very, very... Ooh, Kelric has actually fallen on the European side to, it looked like a big frontal cleave from one of those trash
They're
bags.
as close as they are to the start without having skipped anything. She can just release, and you can see her in the
already see her,
background running up the way, and she'll be rejoining them in moments. The two teams are really neck and neck at this point. They're both fighting the exact same mobs. The European team might be, a few seconds ahead, just looking at the health of those creatures, but they're basically tied.
Yep. North American team finishing off this trash pack now. Towley actually kiting there for a second, just sort of leaping back and forth as the Demon Hunter. I'm not sure entirely why. He did get a bubble as well, so he may have felt a little bit scared about his health at the time.
All right, so as the North American team finishes that last trash pack, we've seen the European team jump in and engage the first boss. Now, for veterans of the Northrend campaign, this may be a familiar figure. Yimiram, once the final boss of Utgard Pinnacle, as thanks for really betraying his brethren and siding with the Lich King and working with the Scourge, his cursed spirit is now on the shores of, essentially, Hell, of Helheim. And you must fight the cursed king before you can blow the horn to access the ship.
Yeah, so both teams are actually neck and neck at the moment. I believe actually the North American team might be very slightly ahead. It's down to, it's actually, as I say that, a big chunk of damage comes out onto Imran.
But even so, it just comes back to that burst potential that we talked about earlier. I mean, the European team pulled this boss easily a good 15 seconds ahead of the North American team.
Yeah.
But they've narrowed the gap to just a few percentage points of health because of that stronger front-loaded single-target DPS that comp brings.
Yeah, but now we're also seeing that maybe the European team has a little bit stronger overall sustained DPS with the way that they've chosen to do this. Either way, it's super, super close right now. It looks like the European team will probably be able to get this kill first, as long as they don't get caught by anything at the last seconds here, but down to 3%, 2%. Looks like Europe will claim the world first kill of Imran, the Fallen King, but North America literally seconds behind at 4% now themselves, and we are going to see that kill happen right now. There we go.
Right.
So,
and now, as soon as you beat the boss, you need to have someone run up that ramp to the giant horn that overlooks the bay and interact with that horn and use it. We saw the European team did that right away. Looks like North American team might have taken the wrong way around initially, so that's going to cost them a few precious seconds.
That's one of the things that can happen when you've literally never been to a dungeon before. Is you're not entirely sure what to do, and they've actually, it looks like they've been caught into a prison.
Exactly. So this is the way it works right now. They're being instantly teleported. There will be a little bit of an interstitial scene in the final version of this dungeon once we're past alpha. Spoilers: the ship sails up. Someone comes out and imprisons you and brings you on into the hold of the ship, essentially as cargo.
Okay, so
we have precious souls.
We're now in the depths of the ship, and obviously this is the living in the land of the dead. So the fact that you are alive means you're very, very precious to these people. This makes a lot of sense, and it's very cool setting for a dungeon, I have to say. So now, as I said, we are in the depths of this ship and just working our way through here. It's almost kind of maze-like here. Are there multiple paths, or
there's a couple of different paths. They all lead to the same place. It's like you said, it's definitely the very closely packed, cramped underquarters of this ship. You see, water leaking from the planks in the roof. Even if you look at the walls, you can see there's almost a rib cage that this ship is made of. And the ship itself is actually crafted from bone and sinew and materials like that. Because really, you're not going to build a ship of the damned out of wood.
You've got so many dead things around to build stuff out of. Why would you build things out of wood? Yeah. So it's actually really hard to tell exactly how things are shaping up. I believe I see in the distance in the North America side, I see the giant that the European team is currently facing. So it looks like North America still just a few seconds behind, but again, just those few seconds. Trekkie actually having to get a big bubble there from Laws. Lots of damage coming out from this giant.
You saw right before that he helpful frontal cone that the artifact uses when activated. It basically shoots the Shadow Flame Dragon Breath. But yeah, those...
Ooh, Laws might go down. Laws will go down. That's bad news for Team Europe, as their healer has fallen, and I'm not sure exactly where he will port back to. North America has now engaged this same giant. And now Alex has fallen on the Europe side as well. This could actually be a lot of trouble for Europe right here. Bellular down super low. He could fall as well. They do actually manage to kill off that remaining bits of trash and avoid wiping entirely and having to kill it back from full health. But this is going to set the European team back and could be an opportunity for the North American team to catch back up.
Exactly. You saw that Lantern of Darkness ability that those patrolling Vrykul use. That's actually tremendously dangerous. It's just the crackling purple lightning that you saw doing consistent AoE damage. Those aren't too bad if you're focus firing them down. I actually think of it as kind of reminiscent of the large Voidwalkers in Shadow Moon Burial Grounds, where, you know, fighting one of them at a time is not too bad. But if you have it going on while you're dealing with other mobs, and that AoE damage is on top of other things, it's a tremendous amount to handle, and you saw they couldn't quite keep up.
Yeah. And looking at North America, they have now downed that giant, but now I believe that's that same mob they've just now aggroed. It's just patrolled onto them that's going to be doing that big purple lightning, the Lantern of Darkness. Yeah, there it is. So we'll have to see if North America can deal with that better than Europe did. Looks like they have managed to come out of that with all their teammates still alive. Again, I should mention, even though this is normal mode, there is still some tuning to take place.
So if we switch back over to the European side, we see them emerging from the below decks area of the ship, actually out to the surface.
Oh, that looks amazing.
Pretty much.
I've never seen this before, so this looks amazing.
As you look around, you are in the midst of the stormiest of seas, sailing on the way to Helheim. And yeah, it's a pretty spectacular backdrop.
All right, and we've now engaged a boss that goes by the name of Harboron. And I have, again, never seen this before. No idea what's about to happen. Apparently there's a shackled servitor that they have to kill?
Yes, so Harboron is basically, he's a keeper and a harvester of souls, you see with his scythe. Actually, if you look like in the inner folds of his cloak and underneath his cape, it actually, the material is made of stars. It's actually kind of reminiscent of Algalon. Maybe there's some connection there, similarly to how, you know, Odin and, as we'll see, Helya are reminiscent of some of the keepers that we saw in Ulduar. But yes, the Shackled Soul ability, he's actually picking one particular player, and that player suffers tremendous damage over time, while Shackled Soul effigies of them need to be killed to prevent that player from dying to that damage. And here we see as the European team has Harboron down to around 50%, the North American team is now making their way out above decks and will be jumping into that same encounter.
This is now the second time I've seen that sort of emerging from the depths of the ship into this rolling ocean thing, and it still looks really, really cool. That is, I have to give massive props to our environment and art teams. That looks amazing.
Our dungeon artists and our effects artists work together really closely to create this effect, but also to kind of sell this moment of emerging from beneath decks. There are hints when you're down below. Now that you know where you are, you might see movement if you look out between planks and the edge of the ship, or see the water dripping from above, but you don't quite know what you're going to come out into until you do it and you have that big reveal.
Yeah, that looks really, really cool. So checking in with Europe, Harboron now down at 13% health. He's trying to do as much damage as he can here, but does not look like he is long for this world, let alone the one that he currently resides in. So he will go down. I don't know how you kill someone in the land of the dead, but
they managed.
They did.
So we'll have to ask them how afterwards. But I think in keeping with, I think what's going to be a consistent theme here, I would expect both of these groups to have more difficulty with the trash than the bosses, because after all, this is normal difficulty, and the bosses have a dungeon journal that can explain their mechanics. So they've probably been able to strategize and largely prepare for what they're going to be seeing, whereas every new trash mob that they see is going to be doing something that's likely to catch them by surprise.
Yeah. When you can look through the dungeon journal and say, okay, yeah, these are these abilities, here's how we deal with them, that's one thing. But when you get to a trash mob and it says bone-chilling scream, I don't know what that is. How do I deal with that? Apparently they're just going to stun them and not, but yeah, it can be something that's very, very difficult. It's actually something, even when you're like a serious raider, you can have more trouble sometimes with the trash than with the bosses, because you get to a pack that you just don't know how to deal with yet.
Exactly. Okay, now, see the North American team having no trouble with Harboron either, and they're soon to be finishing him off.
Yep, and they've actually, I keep saying this, but I think they have actually managed to kill Harboron a little bit quicker. It's not by much, if so, and we will get those full correct times once they've actually finished him. Once they've finished the dungeons. But yeah, they are going to be able to finish off Harboron and begin catching up as best as they can to the European team. It does feel like overall the European team's lead is a little bit bigger than it was earlier on.
Yes.
So I suspect a lot of that is possibly just being able to kill these trash packs faster. Like you said, the trash packs can actually be more difficult than the bosses for something that you've never seen before, but you've been able to read the dungeon journal. So we'll have to see how these teams can continue to move through these dungeons. Looks like Europe is doing a pretty good job right now of just constantly stunning, using AoE stuns and everything they can to be able to keep these guys from being able to use any of their abilities, which honestly makes a whole lot of sense.
Exactly.
If you don't know what they do, then...
Yep, and interrupts are really on point. I mean, consistently, if you just watch the cast bars here, almost every cast that's interruptible is getting interrupted by somebody. Again, if you don't know what the high threat abilities are, what the less dangerous abilities are, err on the safe side, kick just everything you can possibly kick.
Yeah, and they've been doing a great job of that so far. I'm actually very uncertain what's happening right now on the North American side. They seem to just be kind of standing around for a second, maybe trying to, again, this is the first time they've seen this, maybe just having a little bit of a discussion there to go, okay, do we think that we can take 2 pulls?
Right.
And that's what they've done.
They're going to try it, and we will find out if they can take 2 pulls. If they can, they could definitely narrow the gap here. Which you see the European team has cleared out most of those upper decks, and they are fighting essentially the captain of the ship, a bit of a lieutenant, that is going to guard the way down to Helya below.
Ooh, North American team in some trouble here. Their tank has fallen. It looks like the answer to the question of can they take 2 packs is no.
I think the answer was that they could take 2 packs, but not when one of those mobs fears and sends you into a 3rd pack.
Yeah. I kind of feel like 3 packs may have been a little bit too much.
And again,
from
that's
North
just
America.
a product of not knowing what those mobs do, right?
Yep.
If you know they fear, you probably would have pulled them back so that, okay, fear's going to happen, but it's not going to send you into extra things that you're not ready for.
So now we have them moving. I just realized that most of them are playing gnomes on the North American side, which is kind of amazing. But the European team,
so,
I think you were about to say,
exactly.
They
now
this
they are looking down at the front of the ship. They're about to, I think they're probably wondering, all right, is it safe to jump? Yes, it's safe to jump. And here they go. And Helya herself comes out, sick of your interloping, and she's going to confront the adventurers who have dared to venture into Helheim itself.
Yeah, she does not look like a very nice lady, I'm going to be honest.
No, so once a Titan Keeper, similar to Odin, once the first of the Valkyr, she has fallen, and really her body has transformed. She's thoroughly corrupted as she grapples hold of the ship and is going to tear the ship apart to try to destroy you.
Yeah, we're actually seeing those tentacles popping up through the actual deck of the ship here.
Yes, and those will leave permanent holes in the floor of the ship. Every time one of those tentacles pops out, you will see there's a hole in the floor because, well, the tentacle just ripped it apart.
Yeah, which kind of makes me wonder the wisdom of actually killing those tentacles. I kind of feel like they have to, but at the same time, like, it may be the only thing that's actually plugging up those holes. If we're getting extremely serious about physics here, but...
The Naglfar, the Ship of the Damned, may not be the most seaworthy of vessels, but it somehow manages. But actually, no, they do have to kill the tentacles because you actually can't damage Helya directly during this phase of the fight. By damaging her tentacles, each one that you destroy is actually lowering her health by a certain percent. Once you've killed enough tentacles, well, we'll see what she does next.
That's very, very ominous. I have a feeling that you know what she does next.
I couldn't possibly imagine.
All right, so we'll see what happens there. Meanwhile, checking in with the North American team, they are being a lot more careful with their trash clear here, moving their way back through here. There was that fear for just a second, but there's someone channeling a whirlpool of souls in the corner that's doing a lot of damage. Killers actually got very low there for just a second. But checking back in with
but back to the European team. So yes, Helya actually submerges and begins tearing the ship apart with tentacles, and then that's what happens.
Okay.
She is willing to destroy her ship if it will bring you to your doom.
Wow, she is really, really upset with you.
And so now at this point, players have to deal with a lot of the same mechanics from the first phase. Tentacles are still erupting from the ground. There's still a lot of area denial things to avoid, but you have about half as much playable space as you did last time.
Okay, so yeah, the things just got turned up to 11, basically.
Yep.
Europe seems to be doing their best to try and keep these tentacles under control, but you can see from this angle, actually, you can see those holes in the deck. They're actually, you just cannot stand there.
Correct.
So that's making it very difficult to avoid all of these other things going on around. So yeah, this fight looks fairly intense at this particular moment in time.
Yeah, I think overall, this is one of the, in terms of, just production values, in terms of how epic it is, as far as dungeon fights go, this fight I think would be at home in a raid, and it's really awesome that we're able to bring it to just a dungeon encounter for everyone to see when they go to the Helheim dungeon.
Absolutely. This looks amazing. I cannot wait to try this dungeon out for myself. Now, she's actually disappeared for just a second. Is this just sort of a survive for a little while?
She's submerged again. Yes, and again is more tentacles, a lot of dodging. It's just kind of a general avoidance phase.
Okay.
Then she reemerges. However, similar, slight spoilers here, but what you'll see in a moment, similar to Odin, Helya is a being of truly great power, and you're not actually going to kill her here. She is, fighting you, but there's more to her power than you're going to see. Ultimately, the most you can do is drive her off.
Okay. Kind of similar, I mean, it obviously fits in very well with that sort of sea monster theme as well. Like, you don't actually kill the white whale, you just have to try your best. So anyway, that's going to be the complete run for Europe, and they are going to get our faster time once again, 17 minutes, 22 seconds. Very, very well done, especially for a dungeon that obviously no one has ever seen before.
Yeah, just a few deaths to trash along the way, but no major hiccups.
Having some fun with the holes in the deck, I think.
Yep.
Just sort of jumping into them and getting knocked back out. So congratulations to our European team.
Yeah. Now
but we still get to watch the fight again.
Yeah, North America about to engage Helya against this backdrop of ridiculously turbulent, stormy seas. On that occasion, I just want to give a shout out to quest designer Johnny Cash, who just got off the Anthem of the Seas, the cruise ship that was stuck in the middle of the storm in the middle of the Atlantic for the past few days.
I heard that went really well for them.
Yeah, it's apparently a fun time. Fortunately, I don't know if the service on the Naglfar is quite as good as the Anthem of the Seas, but
yeah, probably fewer angry former Vrykul as well.
Likely so.
All right, so North America has now engaged the encounter here, and they're going to start working their way through those tentacles. That was actually an amazing shot that our camera person just got there, with the tentacle bursting up through the underside of the deck. There we go.
Exactly. The floor.
My knowledge of naval terms is obviously not very good. But yeah.
I think in general, I think one of the things that we've really on the encounter design side gravitated towards over the past years is environmental integration. I think that really is the next step in encounter design wherever we can manage to make it happen. From Siegecraft or Black Fuse onward, where the environment can be part of the boss fight, and you're not just standing in a circular room fighting someone who's stationary in the middle of it, but you're in a real place, and the interactions with that place are part of what shapes the fight.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, actually. Like, one of the things that in PvP we see a lot is like, you have to break line of sight to do this, and this map is better than this map because of the distances between everything. So kind of bringing a little bit of that, in a sense, to raiding and PvE and even dungeons as well. I find that really, really interesting. It does give that sort of opportunity to take it to the next level, like you say, and say, okay, now not only do you need to know the mechanics, but you also need to control the positioning of your character and everything as well. That still looks amazing.
It really is.
So
so
cool.
Yeah, here we see Helya tearing apart her own ship to get closer to our group of adventurers, kill them with her own hands.
Yep, doing her best. Obviously, we now know that the end result here is not that she is killed and floats away as a dead body in the sea, but
she leaves a treasure chest because she's only polite.
That's the nice thing for her to do,
Exactly.
really. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and I very well may be, but it actually looks like there's a different pattern in the holes on the deck of the ship.
Yes, it's not the same pattern every time. There's nothing that you can memorize here. It's just a matter of, different locations will get destroyed. You have to adapt to the playing field. There's some logic behind the scenes to, spread out the holes to a reasonable extent, so you don't have one time you pull the boss and one half of the floor is totally unplayable, the other half is totally empty.
Right.
But it's not something you can predict, it's something you just have to react to.
That's very cool. So again, North America, unfortunately, it seems like our interface doesn't really show us when this encounter is going to end. We don't have a boss health percentage that we can really look at here.
Yeah, I think she's low, when she submerges for that second time, she's low on health, and she will be coming back up, and I think shortly after that, it's probably another 20, 30 seconds left in the fight, once we see her come back up again the second time now.
Cool.
But yeah, so again, I mean, similar to the European group, they've really had no difficulty with the fight. They probably knew what to expect, at least as far as the abilities go. They had a strategy going into it. It really was just that unfortunate mishap with the upper deck enemies where they pulled 3 packs at once, and that was all the difference.
Yep, and there we go. 21 minutes, 25 seconds for the North American team. Much shorter gap. Obviously, both teams progressed it through the dungeon at a much faster rate, largely because it is just a shorter dungeon.
Exactly.
But here now taking a look at our final times. Wow, there was a difference of, I'm trying to do the math in my head here. I can't do it. Very few seconds on Imran.
Yes.
I'm always bad at trying to do the math when I'm put on the spot like this. About a minute for Harboron, and then only about 3 minutes for Helia as well. So it really seems like the big difference came down to not the individual boss encounters so much as the gaps in between.
Yes, exactly. I mean, and the time I think that you saw there also accounted for the full trash clear up to it, and not just the boss itself. I think it would have been interesting, and it's maybe something we can do for any future events like this, to break out actual boss combat time separate from clear to the boss, to really get a sense of where different group strengths and weaknesses are, and where the race was won and lost.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning as well that this event is really kind of a testing bed for us, and like the first time that we've really done anything like this. So any feedback from yourself or from anyone watching as well on how this event has gone and what you would have liked to see, what would have been cool to have, that's really great feedback to have. It's awesome.
I mean, it's really exciting to be able to showcase dungeons. I think dungeons are a really central part of the gameplay that we have planned for the Legion expansion. We want this expansion to really showcase dungeons more than any one prior to it.
Okay.
And it's not just the variety of dungeons that we have with 10 different ones, but also the new challenge mode system that is really going to create an experience that makes dungeons rewarding and relevant to all players. From those who are just finishing heroics and want to set their foot in something a bit harder, to those who really want to challenge themselves at the upper thresholds of their skill and be rewarded for it.
Yeah, personally, I love running dungeons. I'm one of those people that misses the Cataclysm days where you had to run a bunch of them every week to cap out your Valor. So I love dungeons. I'm really looking forward to that challenge mode system. It sounds like a lot of fun. It's just right up my alley for that sort of like, I'm just gonna hop on WoW, run a few dungeons here and there, see what we can do.
Exactly, and it's like that's one of the most fun parts of the first few weeks of a new expansion, and we want to keep that for the entire expansion. There's no reason it needs to just last a few weeks.
Excellent. So that's going to bring us pretty close to the end of our broadcast here. But I believe you actually had something you wanted to mention about the alpha.
Yeah, so hope you all enjoyed seeing Maw of Souls for the first time. For those players who are in our alpha, basically just as soon as I can get back to my desk physically at the end of this broadcast, we'll be opening up the Maw of Souls dungeon on normal mode for alpha testing. So if you're in it, enjoy. If not, there'll be plenty of videos and streams and fat boss guides and other guides coming your way in the near future, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure all of our YouTubers and streamers that we had here today are going to be putting out content about those as well, as part of what makes them YouTubers and streamers, I guess.
Exactly, yeah. I look forward to hearing about their experience actually on these runs and kind of what worked for them, what surprised them, what went wrong they weren't expecting, just kind of hearing it from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
And definitely check out all their channels. If you go to the blog on the World of Warcraft website, it does have links to all of their channels in it, so definitely check out all of our YouTubers and streamers, and a big thank you to them for actually coming out.
Yeah.
If you do not have alpha access, apologies, but also
invites are continuing to go out. We're going to be continuing to send out waves and really expand the pool of people that are able to test and give us feedback. We want us to start on the smaller side because there is instability. There are a lot of specs that aren't playable, and we wanted some small base of feedback to help us iron out those crashes, iron out things that weren't working. But as we have more and more content to showcase, we want to share it with more and more people.
Yep,
so
definitely.
Keep an eye on your inbox. Make sure that you're opted in for beta testing on your Battle.net account because that is essential.
Yep. And until then, fingers crossed. There is actually, just this weekend, there is the Draenor Dungeon bonus event is going on. So you can, I guess I say just this weekend. It runs until
exactly.
It runs until Monday.
Exactly. For the next few days, you can get those Draenor reps from doing random dungeons. You can get some Valor, get some extra loot from doing mythic dungeons. So if you want to scratch that dungeon itch, this is the week to do it.
I also want to point out, I know every time a developer wears this shirt, there's all sorts of mention of how jealous everybody is about that. That's a developer shirt. I am completely
not for sale. Sorry.
Yeah, I am completely peanut butter and jelly about that. But I do want to point out this shirt that I'm wearing, which is almost as good, will be showing up on the Blizzard Gear Store very, very soon. This is a new product that we'll be rolling out very shortly. And props to our licensing team and our products team for giving me the. Oh, thank you. They actually pulled away the graphics so you can get a better view of the shirt there. Excellent. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out for that. As well as I'm sure other products coming very, very soon to the Blizzard Gear Store. So that's going to be it. That's going to wrap up our broadcast here. Thanks again so much, everybody, for tuning in and hanging out. I've been Josh Allen. Obviously, this is Ian Hazzikostas.
And it has been a pleasure. For those of you in Alpha, enjoy Maw of Souls, and can't wait to share more with you in the future.
We're going to let you get back to your desk so you can activate that. We will see you guys later.
Awesome. Take care, guys.